The second episode of Top Chef All Stars LA is all wrapped up now. We'll go over the episode, and then at the very end, I will catch you up on what happened in our first episode of Last Chance Kitchen. So if you want to know about what happened there between Joe and whoever gets kicked off in episode 2, I will cover that up at the end. So last week, we ended with our chefs being thrown immediately into another elimination challenge. This one was all inspired by food critic Johnathan Gold, who recently passed away, and this was sort of a celebration of his life and what he did. And we got to see all our chefs go all over LA, visit some of the restaurants he critiqued, and it was really mind-blowing to see how some of the restaurant owners reacted when talking about Johnathan Gold, and how much his critiques changed some of those restaurants' lives. Because he didn't just focus on high-end cuisine, he covered everything from the smallest of food trucks to the toppest of top-line restaurants in LA, and you really got to see that today, and just how much of an impact one food critic has had on the food industry. All right, so since we got to see our chefs go all over LA, we got to see a huge variety of dishes on display today. They were all over the map. We had Filipino, Ethiopian, an attempt at Indian, and everything in between. So I will just jump straight ahead to our judging for the day, and I'll start with our top. Our top 3 ended up being Nene, Kevin, and Brian. There wasn't a lot to choose from for our top 3 this week. Personally, I really felt like one chef separated themselves from the rest, and many of our chefs either left not much of an impression on the judges or a negative one. So our top 3, Nene, Kevin, and Brian. So Nene made a masa ball soup, which was a play on matzo ball soup, using masa in as a substitute for matzah. So yeah, that's a little bit of a tongue twister there, but it was a really creative, good idea. You could clearly see some of the inspiration from the restaurants Nene went to, and overall she just did a great job, just like she did last week. And you got to kind of put her at the top of the heap so far, even though it's very early in the season, of all of our chefs on the show. Next up, we have Brian, who it was shockingly his first time cooking Filipino. And I really feel like he was the only chef who took this level of risk in today's challenge, cooking a cuisine he'd never touched before. Just felt like he was really inspired by the restaurants he went to, and felt like that's what he wanted to go for. One of his biggest positives he had was how he was serving the food to the judges and all of the guests at the celebration of Johnathan Gold's life. And that was that he was cutting the meat right before all of his customers and presenting a nice fresh plate for them to devour. So that's about it for his positives. And our winner today was Kevin, and he had probably the most out of place dish out of all of the chefs on display today. He made this little deep fried croquette with a apple butter sauce that he got the recipe from his grandma, and every single judge who went up, you could see they looked skeptical seeing a little deep fried nugget in front of them. And when they bit into that little morsel of food, they were all blown away. They could not stop complimenting him enough. They wanted him to franchise that apple butter sauce, and he was the clear winner today, which was very interesting because I think Kevin almost went home last week, and if he had been on the bottom team last week, I think it would have been him heading to Last Chance Kitchen. So great job, Kevin. You turned things around, and we'll have to see if you can keep that going for the rest of the season. So our bottom, even though this could have included a lot more chefs, we ended up with Angelo, Stephanie, and Eric. Eric, he had issues right from the grocery store when he tried to buy duck, found out that someone else had just purchased all of the duck, and last minute changes his dish to scallops. So he ends up with this scallops and red cabbage kit pho, and his main critiques were that the cabbage was undercooked, the scallops and the cabbage just didn't really go together, and I think not being able to get his meat really hurt him today. And then next up we have Stephanie. She made as Padma described it, a Indian nacho. Overall, this was uninspired, unflavored, and I think on your average week, this would have been a dish that would have sent her home. But we had Angelo, who was a total disaster start to finish today. We saw him in the grocery store looking for a certain spice, unable to find it, and just being like, okay, whatever, I'll just use some other spices. It'll make up for it. It'll be fine. He kept getting the same critique over and over. Too sweet, too sweet, too sweet. There was one scene when I think Jen tasted Angelo's sauce or his broth, less than a minute before the guests were going to walk in, and the look on her face that was just like, oh boy, that is not good. So this was just a disaster for Angelo. He is our chef who's sent home, sent to Last Chance Kitchen to face off against Joe Sasto. So might as well jump right into that. They both got a seafood challenge for the first episode of Last Chance Kitchen. This was a very interesting one because we saw both our chefs deliver a significantly higher quality dish than what we saw from them on the show. Angelo, he made this a soft scrambled eggs with caviar and a little bit of cream on top dish, and the judges seemed to really enjoyed it. His critique was they asked for a seafood forward dish, and the caviar just wasn't featured enough in that dish. And then on the other side, Joe Sasto made the same mistake. He cooked gooey duck with a little bit of puree on top, but he took that puree, completely hid all of the gooey duck, and I think that this one was super close, but deep down inside, I believe that Tom really has a soft spot for Joe Sasto, and we see Joe win here, and will continue going on in Last Chance Kitchen. All right, that is it for episode 2 of Top Chef All-Stars LA and our first episode of Last Chance Kitchen. So I will catch up with all of you next week, and thank you so much for watching.